There are things in medicine that are not wrong, but they are not automatically right for everyone. After the age of 60, the body begins to operate by a different set of rules. The immune system does not respond with the same strength it once did. Inflammation behaves differently. Recovery takes longer, and the margin for error becomes smaller. Yet in many clinics across the country, the list of recommended vaccines often looks almost identical whether a patient is 35 or 75. That is where we need to pause. My name is Dr. Javier Morales. I have spent my career practicing medicine in the United States. I believe in vaccines. I have seen firsthand how immunization prevents suffering, hospitalization, and death. Vaccines are one of the most important achievements in modern healthcare, but believing in vaccines does not mean applying them without thought. Once someone crosses 60, medical decisions require more personalization. The question is no longer simply, is this vaccine effective? The question becomes, is this vaccine appropriate for this specific person at this specific stage of life with their specific health profile? Today, I want to walk you through 7 vaccines that deserve a second look after 60. Some of them are rarely discussed, some are routinely offered. A few may genuinely surprise you. This is not about fear, it is about clarity. It is about protecting the people who once protected us with decisions that reflect who they are today, not who they were 40 years ago. Let us begin. Let us start with a vaccine that most Americans rarely think about, the BCG vaccine. In the United States, BCG is not part of the routine vaccination schedule. It is primarily used in countries where tuberculosis remains widespread. Occasionally, it appears in special circumstances such as certain occupational exposures or extended stays in high-burden regions. It is also used in a completely different context as part of bladder cancer treatment. What many people do not realize is that BCG is a live vaccine. It contains a weakened strain of bacteria related to tuberculosis. In a young and healthy immune system, this is generally tolerated well, but after 60, the immune landscape changes. Many older adults are living with diabetes, chronic kidney disease, autoimmune disorders, or are taking medications that suppress immune function. In those cases, introducing even a weakened live bacterium can carry meaningful risk. There have been documented cases of disseminated BCG infection where the bacteria spread beyond the intended local response and affect multiple organ systems. Is this common? No. Is it possible? Yes. And in medicine, possibility matters when the patient is older and more vulnerable. For the vast majority of Americans over 60, BCG simply is not necessary. And when something is both unnecessary and potentially risky, caution becomes the responsible choice. Now let us shift to something much more common: hepatitis A vaccination. Retirement travel has exploded in recent years. Couples in their late 60s are taking cruises through the Caribbean, visiting parts of Central America, or spending a few weeks abroad checking off destinations they dreamed about for decades. In many travel clinics, hepatitis A vaccination is almost automatic. But here is what should be asked first. How long is the trip? What are the actual exposure risks? Is the person staying in a resort environment with controlled food sources or backpacking through rural regions? For short, low-risk trips, especially in healthy but older adults, immune globulin may be considered as an alternative in certain situations. Risk assessment matters. Blanket recommendations do not. Again, this is not about refusing protection. Hepatitis A can be serious in older adults. The point is personalization. The decision should be based on real exposure risk, underlying health conditions, and timing. After 60, the conversation should always go deeper than a checklist. Now let us talk about something far more familiar: the nasal spray flu vaccine, commonly known as FluMist. Many people prefer it because there is no needle involved. It feels simple, quick, convenient. But what often gets overlooked is that FluMist is a live attenuated influenza vaccine. It contains a weakened but still living form of the virus. Here is the critical detail. In the United States, this vaccine is not approved for adults over 49 years of age. Yet I have met older patients who are unsure which version they received. In busy clinics or pharmacies, assumptions can happen. After 60, the immune system goes through a process known as immunosenescence. That means immune responses become less coordinated and less predictable. A live virus that would be handled efficiently by a younger adult may linger longer or trigger stronger systemic symptoms in an older body. For older adults, there are better options. High-dose influenza vaccines and adjuvanted versions are specifically formulated to stimulate a stronger protective response without introducing a live virus. These are designed with aging immune systems in mind. This is not about avoiding flu protection. Influenza hospitalizes and kills tens of thousands of older Americans every year. The right flu vaccine can be life-saving. The key word is right. Now let us move to something that surprises many people, the MMR booster. Most adults over 60 either had measles during childhood or were vaccinated decades ago. In the majority of cases, they already possess lasting immunity. The MMR vaccine is also a live attenuated vaccine. So when might it come up? Occasionally, during outbreak situations, employment requirements, or international travel documentation. In those cases, instead of automatically administering a booster, a simple blood test can measure antibody levels. This is called a titer test. If immunity is already present, another live vaccine may not be necessary. For a healthy younger adult, an extra dose may pose minimal concern. For someone over 60 with underlying health conditions or subtle immune compromise, unnecessary exposure to a live vaccine is worth reconsidering. Again, the theme remains consistent. Not refusal, not fear, but thoughtful evaluation. After 60, medical decisions should shift from routine to individualized. And sometimes the safest step is not adding something new, but confirming what protection already exists. Now we arrive at a vaccine that demands serious respect. The yellow fever vaccine. Unlike the previous examples, this is not routinely offered in primary care clinics. It usually appears in travel medicine settings. A retired couple plans a once-in-a-lifetime trip to Brazil. A group of friends books a safari in Kenya. Suddenly they are told that proof of yellow fever vaccination may be required for entry. The yellow fever vaccine is highly effective. In fact, it is one of the most successful vaccines ever developed. But it is also a live vaccine. And in adults over 60, it carries a significantly higher risk profile compared to younger individuals. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has acknowledged that adults over 60 have an increased risk of serious adverse events from this vaccine. One of the most concerning complications is something called yellow fever vaccine associated viscerotropic disease. In simple terms, this means the weakened vaccine virus does not remain controlled. Instead, it spreads through the body in a way that resembles actual yellow fever infection. It can affect the liver, the kidneys, the cardiovascular system, multiple organs at once. While this reaction is rare, when it does occur, it can be catastrophic. Mortality rates in reported cases have been extremely high. Now let me be clear, most older adults who receive the vaccine will not experience this complication, but risk is not zero, and after 60, risk increases. So, what should families do? First, evaluate the true exposure risk. Is travel to a yellow fever endemic region unavoidable? Is the stay prolonged and rural or brief and urban? Second, discuss medical waivers. In some cases, physicians can provide documentation exempting individuals when the vaccine poses higher risk than the disease itself. I have had conversations with families where a 70-year-old father was eager to check off a bucket list destination. And sometimes the most loving decision is not the adventurous one. I would rather see a postponed trip than a preventable medical crisis. This is where medicine stops being theoretical. It becomes deeply personal. When the immune system is no longer operating at full strength, the margin between protection and harm narrows. And in that narrow space, careful judgment matters more than ever. Let us shift now to something that reflects how medicine evolves. The older shingles vaccine, known as Zostavax. For years, Zostavax was the only available protection against shingles in the United States. It was a live attenuated vaccine designed to reduce the risk of reactivation of the virus that causes chickenpox. At the time, it was better than nothing, but it had two significant limitations in older adults. First, its effectiveness declined sharply with age. In people over 70, protection dropped substantially. In those over 80, the efficacy became quite limited. Second, because it was a live vaccine, it carried the same theoretical concerns we have discussed throughout this video, particularly for individuals with weakened immune systems. Today, Zostavax has been discontinued in the United States. It has been replaced by a recombinant vaccine called Shingrix, which does not contain a live virus and provides over 90% protection even in older adults. This is an important reminder. Medical recommendations change. What was acceptable 10 years ago may not be the best option today. If someone over 60 received Zostavax in the past, it may be worth discussing updated protection with their physician. Now let us talk about oral typhoid vaccination. When older adults travel to certain parts of South Asia, Africa, or Latin America, typhoid protection may be recommended. There are two types available: an injectable inactivated vaccine and an oral capsule known as Vivotif, which contains a live attenuated strain of bacteria. The oral version is convenient, but it is still a live vaccine. It must be taken over several days, and it can interact with antibiotics or other medications. Many older adults are already managing complex medication schedules. Adding a live oral vaccine into that mix deserves careful consideration. The injectable version, while not perfect, avoids the introduction of a live organism. For many adults over 60, that simple distinction can matter. Once again, the message is consistent. The goal is not avoidance, the goal is alignment. After 60, each medical decision should match the individual sitting in front of the clinician, their age, their medications, their immune strength, their real level of exposure. Because thoughtful medicine is not about doing more, it is about doing what fits. Before we end, I want to speak to you a little more personally. Everything I shared today comes from two places, from my years practicing medicine and from my role as a son. As a physician, I believe deeply in vaccination. I have seen vaccines prevent hospitalizations. I have seen them save lives. I recommend them every day in my practice. But as a son, I also know that when someone you love crosses 60, every medical decision feels different. The margin for error feels smaller. The stakes feel higher. And here is my honest opinion. After 60, healthcare should never be automatic. It should never be rushed. It should never be based on habit alone. It should be individualized, thoughtful, and specific to the person sitting in that chair. That does not mean avoiding vaccines. It means choosing wisely. I also want to be very clear about something important. This video is for educational purposes only. It is not a substitute for personalized medical advice. Every individual has a unique medical history, medication profile, and risk exposure. Decisions about vaccination should always be made in consultation with a qualified healthcare professional who understands that full picture. My goal here is not to create fear, it is to encourage informed conversations. If a vaccine is recommended for your parent, ask questions. Ask which version, ask why, ask how it applies specifically to them. Good doctors welcome those questions. In my own family, these are real discussions we have around the kitchen table. Not dramatic, not emotional, just careful, respectful, intentional, and that is what I hope for you. Have the conversation, be present, advocate when necessary, update decisions as science evolves. Because protecting the people who once protected you is not about reacting to headlines. It is about steady, informed care. If this helped you, share it with someone who needs it. Start the conversation. That is where real protection begins.